Hi friends, Lindsay here. Today we're going to draw a compass, and this may seem kind of like a weird thing to draw, but it was the prompt for Inktober yesterday, and I thought rather than doing a nautical or a directional compass, I would draw a compass that I would use for drawing. It's totally meta, huh? I thought it would be just kind of fun anyway to do that, and I hope you enjoy it. So I just turned on the camera as I was doing my daily Inktober sketch. I'm working on some marker paper. This is your smooth, thin marker paper. This paper is by Artix, and it is the Kira Kira line, and it's I think it's about 7 by 7 or 6 by 6. I'm trying to count the squares as I'm talking, but that's too much. That's too much brain power for me, guys. Anyway, it's a square, and it's just thin marker paper. They also have a thicker mixed media paper, which is nice if you'd like to add a lot of different medias to your work. So just kind of keep that in mind if you're looking for some paper. I'm just sketching with a call erase pencil. This is an erasable pencil by Prismacolor, and I'm using the darker kind of navy blue color, and just kind of arranging it so it looks the way I want. Now, I didn't think I wanted the pencil to be very long, so I started off by sketching it a little bit shorter, and I did use a ruler to make sure that it was gonna run straight through the compass arm and work out. And I apologize, my head's gonna pop in every now and again because a lot of times I like to look directly over my artwork rather than leaning back, because you can get a parallax or a distortion when you're drawing flat at a desk. And I usually do draw flat, but oftentimes I'll have it like at a bit of an angle, but for filming I'm usually using it flat. Now I thought it'd be fun to use the compass to actually draw a circle around the drawn compass, and that way I can have parts sticking out of that shape. And that's been something I've been enjoying doing for Inktober, is like making either a binding box like a square or a rectangle, or some shape that I could let the subject protrude from. I just think it looks cool. You can let me know what you think in the comments below, but I'm having a fun time with this technique. And another thing that I really like about Inktober, speaking of a daily drawing thing, is that if I don't love how something comes out, it's fine. I'm totally willing to experiment with these drawings and try different things and try different colors and try different media, because I've got another chance to do it the next day. It's a daily challenge, so if I don't like today's, I'll just do it again tomorrow. I decided that I would use a variety of markers, and I did grab my set of gray tone markers from Artix, which is a really nice selection of grays. What I like is that I like the gray set from Arteza as well, but I don't like how they named them. It was very confusing to know if I had a warm gray or a cool gray going by the color chips, but what I like about Artix is they used a very customary naming system. So they've got your full range, your 9 cool grays or 10 cool grays, you got your 10 warm grays, you got your blue grays, your green grays. So I like that because you know what grays are going to work together. So that's why I just kind of grab that box of markers when I need a gray set, and that's what I would recommend. And I do believe they offer that in a brush tip now. I have the bullet chisel version, but I do think I saw a brush tip on Amazon. So I'll link to both of those if I think of it in the video description, but no, they exist. But I just like how it's very practically laid out, and no matter what other brand of markers you might use, that's kind of how Copic names theirs, and I just think it makes so much sense. I think Prismacolor does it that way. Most of your art, your legacy art brands do it that way. I'm starting in though with the pastel sets that I've been using a lot for the my Inktober drawings. Again, my head keeps popping in there. I do eventually move my camera mount so that I'm not like having to lean over it so much. So yeah, it is what it is, right? So I'm putting down my colorful colors first, and that's what I've been doing a lot in my Inktober sketches. If you follow me over on Instagram, I've been putting down some kind of like vibrant colors or pastel colors first, and then neutralizing over them with like browns or grays. And I just think it's a really fantastic look, and maybe that's going to be my marker style that I develop. I love using alcohol markers because they're so quick and immediate. Well, I don't know if they're definitely necessarily quick, because I do spend some time on this. I spent 45 minutes on this sketch. But they're very immediate, and I love that I can lay down some crazy colors and then just keep layering over it, and then it doesn't especially if you're working on marker paper, it doesn't like blend out or bleed out. You can keep layering and not have it really affect the colors underneath, which can be a blessing. It can be a curse. If you want to blend, if that's a technique you like to do, I wouldn't recommend marker paper. I would recommend like a mixed media paper or a Bristol or cardstock, or even a cellulose watercolor paper. I know that sounds crazy, but a smooth cellulose watercolor paper has actually worked. Not all of them though. I generally don't recommend watercolor paper for markers because it does tend to be absorbent and run your markers dry. But I've had a few pleasant surprises where I've just kind of like jumped in with markers over a watercolor to kind of add in some transparent glazes that I know won't bother what's underneath. And you know, I've had some good success with that. So as always, experiment with what you have. If you think you want to put a background in on a piece, I recommend you do it early on because it is going to affect the values of the marker that you already have down. So I used a lot of pastel tones on the subject, and I didn't know if they were going to be robust enough to stand out with the gray glazes I was going to put in. And I knew that I needed to get that black in there, in that kind of binding circle that I wanted to have in the background. I knew if I got that in, I would be able to determine whether my colors were bold enough. And I'm using the bullet tip of this marker to get around the detail, to get the small areas and edges, and then I'm filling in with the chisel tip because it just makes things go a lot quicker. Even when I have a brush tip chisel tip marker, I tend to use the chisel tips for the background. It saves wear and tear on my brush, and it does deposit ink quickly like a brush tip would. So if you have markers and maybe you can't afford markers with brush tips, or you bought a set with chisel tips and you regretted it and wished you bought brush tips, I can tell you, anytime you're following along a tutorial or doing a project where you wish you had a brush tip, if you use a chisel tip in those situations, you are going to get that faster flow of ink. It's going to help you with blending. It's going to help you with those wide swaths of color that you might want, those expressive strokes, and you will get used to using the chisel tip. That's all we had for the longest time. So I got really comfortable with it because that was the only option out there. I feel like there's a little bit steeper of a learning curve using a chisel tip versus a brush tip, but it's definitely doable. And if you have them already, get familiar with it, and you can really do just about anything with that chisel tip that you could with a brush. The flicking technique is difficult, so if you want to blend, I would recommend like a more blendable paper such as Nina Classic Crest cardstock or any of the blending cards or Bristols that are available. But you can definitely do it with those markers. After adding outline with my fine liner, I just had a Winsor Newton fine liner, I decided to go in with warm gray markers in different, this I think is a warm gray 4. I went in and just put some light shading here and there, and I love having that pastel kind of showing through because it makes putting those grays down a lot more fun, and I just feel like it's a little bit more interesting. Now this I think is a warm gray 7, and I'm adding some shading to the pencil. I wanted to pretty much just stick to the pastel set and the gray set here. I'm really having a fun time limiting a lot of my drawings to the pastel set and a few gray markers, and then just a little bit of colored pencil for kind of zhuzhing up the color a little bit. I just think it's a really fun combination, and when you're doing a daily challenge, it's good to keep your supplies limited so you don't try to throw everything but the kitchen sink at it, because you're going to burn out if you start spending 3 hours on your drawings. You're going to need to get these done. And for me this month, the Inktober sketches have been just like a kind of like an unwind at the end of the day. I felt very like it was my treat at the end of the day to do my Inktober sketch. And that's really, I think, best case scenario for some of these challenges, because I've done challenges before where it's like 8 o'clock at night and I'm like, oh, I haven't done my sketch yet. I got to do it. And it can get very frustrating, and you can burn out pretty easily. I did decide to switch over to a brush tip marker here because I wasn't happy with the way my bubbles looked, but looking back at the video, I think they were fine. I think I actually overdid it with the marker a little bit, but sometimes you can't tell until you look at it later, and then you're like, oh, I really shouldn't have put that extra black in there. It would have been fine. But hey, c'est la vie. C'est la vie. That's what doing these daily sketches, you learn a lot, you get to experiment a lot, because you always have a do-over the next day. So don't try to make your drawings perfect. I'm using a white Posca pen to go in and add some highlights. I love this circle template. Oh my gosh, I use this all the time. I bought it at Staples probably about 25 years ago, and it is so handy. I just for crisping up a line, getting some nice perfect circles drawn. You wouldn't believe how often you would use that. And it's a couple bucks. It's steal of a deal. It's one of my most used tools. I use it way more than the compass, to be honest. I rarely actually use a compass, but I do use that little circle template very frequently. And again, my big old head keeps getting in the way, but I do like to look straight down on my drawing when I'm working. And I've been doing a lot of my Inktobers upstairs at my fun art desks where I don't even have to think about that. And apparently I wasn't thinking about the fact I was recording while I was doing this one either. But there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this this sketch for Inktober, and I hope if you're doing Inktober, you're hanging in strong, you're halfway done, and isn't that a great feeling? Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.